tolerators. This is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before with your host, Natalie Katona.
And Dina Alkatib.
On this podcast, Dina and I have been exploring some of the impactful relationships we've had with men, but today we're going in an exciting new direction. We have Annie Sieg, an amazing artist out of Chicago. Yep, I'm not making things up. I met through TikTok.
Woo.
She's more evidence for me that it isn't the internet that's bad, it's the people using the internet that need work.
Truly, wow. No truer statement has ever been said.
Like, literally, everyone has this, wow, the internet makes me sad, and everything about the internet is bad. And I'm just, over here, on D&D, Discord, and mentally ill TikTok, and I'm like, well, I'm vibing. I don't know about you guys.
Right.
So, Annie, could you give us a brief overview on how you came to be a wonderful professional artist who does beautiful work that I'm obsessed with?
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, thank you. That's a very kind setup for that question. It sounds like cliche and tacky to do the I've always made art thing, but I did grow up in a pretty creative family. My mom is a writer and has done some painting, and she was really good at kind of outside the box parenting in a lot of ways. Growing up, she never let me or my sister have coloring books because she was that's teaching you to color within somebody else's lines. So she would get us big rolls of butcher paper, and we would just have to make our own drawings on them. So that kind of thing where she was just
My God, your mom just blew my mind right there. Hold on a minute, because I'm holy shit, I love coloring books, but now I'm I don't want to color in anybody else's lines.
They're the tool of the oppressor.
Trust me, I get it. There's something very therapeutic about just filling what's already there. But especially for young, developing creative minds, it was kind of cool to be make your own picture. Why do you need someone to make a picture for you? You do it yourself. So I grew up doing a lot of art stuff. And I think most people at some point in their development are oh, okay, well, I'm going to need a real job. And that did not really happen to me for whatever reason. I, for a long time, was a professional ballroom dance teacher because I was that'll be my real job. And that's also an insane non-job. So I just have kind of found a way to make my living through different weird creative outlets, kind of stumbling my way through existence and somehow scraping by so far. And then when the pandemic turned the entire universe upside down, I really wanted to refocus on some of the stuff that I originally really loved about art, getting into more traditional, figurative oil painting, all of that, and also thought I should double down on the whole nightmare that is social media. And after years of plugging away on Instagram to no avail, somehow TikTok was really responsive, which has been a shock and a delight and has brought very cool people like you into my life. And I've had, especially recently in my comments, I try and do a lot of discussions with the art community about what I'm experiencing and who else is and what everybody's up to. And I posted something talking about some of the challenges I've had on the app. And I got a bunch of people in my comments being no legitimate artist uses TikTok as a sales platform. And I was well, it's my full-time job and it's really improved my sales. So
some other artists that I don't know her I know you, but I enjoy her art, so I was so bummed out. She did this hateful I hate when you're scrolling through TikTok and some artist is just begging you with a sound that it takes them fucking hours to make this, so why don't you look at it? And I was whoa, we're all just trying to make $1 and feel everything in the apocalypse. So
it's hard because there are absolutely frustrating things about any social media and about just the industry. I was going to say the art industry, but also the podcast industry. Any creative industry is going to have a lot of struggles, and it makes sense to want to commiserate and to talk about those things. And I've definitely done that. But I also feel this is going to sound so woo-woo floaty out there, but there is this element of if I'm putting out stressful, angry, rage energy, what the app brings me is other people who want to be mad about things. And then I get angrier and they get angrier and we're all sitting in a pity party. Versus when I do put a post out there that's I really appreciate the support I've gotten, or I've noticed that the more I interact with other people's art, the more they are a cheerleader back for me. Then the people in my comments are like, you're doing great, and I also love art. And I'm like, we both love art, and we're all friends. And it becomes like a cute, like, Care Bear moment. And that's what I want out of my social networking.
Yes, definitely.
Like, it is, like, Art Talk is such a beautiful TikTok community that, like, I even, like, every once in a while, my imposter syndrome will kick in, and I'll be like, how did you trick the artist community on TikTok to like you? And I'm like, I don't know. I just did a thing and took a picture of it and put it on TikTok, and they're nice people. I don't know.
It attracts the nice people for you.
Honestly, I really value and appreciate people who are part of an art community who are not professional full-time artists. I've talked, like, when I say that I struggle with, like, censorship or other things in the platform, a lot of people will be like, well, here are some only artist platforms. And I don't want to go to them, because one of the things I like about a TikTok or an Instagram or any of those is that sometimes my art will cross the path of someone who's not looking for art, who isn't an artist, but who might respond to what I'm putting out there. And those lead to much more interesting relationships and conversations than if you're only existing in your little, like, microcosm of other people who do and make the same things you do and make.
Right. Now, I realized that during my intro, I didn't even talk a little bit about what your current subject matter with your oil painting and art is, but we're going to also, in the podcast description, we'll put your website and everything. So, Tolerators, this is me prompting you to click on the website as I weave you how Annie's beautiful work. So, so Annie has been painting plus-size bodies in the nude with oil paint, and that's why she gets so much censorship flack on TikTok. And it's beautiful and wonderful, and I have been describing it to people as like a soft sensuality to your work. Every time I see your work, I'm like, oh, it's just so soft, but also so sensual. Ooh, it's creamy.
That's what it is. I appreciate that very much. The whole body painting situation stemmed from something kind of cool that I did not expect to spiral out so much, which was the pandemic hit. I really wanted to get back into traditional oil painting. But in traditional oil painting, you're working from a live model most of the time. And in the midst of a global pandemic, that's not something you have a lot of access to. And so I put out, this was before I was even on TikTok, I put out a post on my Instagram, which was mostly like people I knew in real life, and was like, this is a weird request, but would anyone like to send me nudes to paint from? And I had thought maybe a couple bold people would respond, and I got this crazy outreach where, like, my hairdresser, my barista, people I knew in high school, like, all of these contacts, some of whom I hadn't spoken to in years, were like, I'll send you a nude to paint. And so honestly, I wasn't intentionally trying to do some kind of body positive movement. It was at a time when a lot of people were feeling really weird about their bodies. They were stuck at home, and they maybe weren't getting the same exercise they were used to, and they were wearing sweatpants every day. So those photo exchanges also led to conversations of people being like, I feel crazy sending you this, but I'm really isolated and I feel weird about my body, and it might be nice to have somebody else portray it in a way that would be, I don't know, a different perspective. And so it led to these conversations with people about scarring and changes through pregnancy and age and weight gain and weight loss and all of the wild things that your body goes through throughout the course of a lifetime. And I just had a lot of fun painting them. And then when TikTok started popping off, I did a similar post where I was like, would anyone like to volunteer? And TikTok is like so much more intense in my experience than Instagram. And I got this like huge response and had to be like, okay, everyone, I'm not going to be able to get to all of you right away. But I did not, when I first put up a post being like, who wants to send me their butt? I did not think it was going to lead to what has become like more than a year-long art.
Butt talk. There's a whole butt talk. I love it. So you're talking about all these, what people, the general public would consider non-traditional, like, models for your work. And have you always chosen your models like that? You know, a little more like open, or have you faced like backlash for doing portraits of different types of people with diverse backgrounds and looks and all the things?
I feel like I have mostly received pretty positive feedback because of the little corner of the internet that I exist on. I'm not in front of a lot of, honestly, male gaze. The truth of the matter is most of the people in my feed are women or are creative, artistic, queer, like any part of that kind of culture that tends to be more accepting, more artistically free, nicer about things. So I really have been shocked by how little hate I've gotten. It's more a matter of, I see all the time that I will post a painting of a plus-size woman in a sensual, nude type situation. I'll go out of my way to try and censor parts of it or crop it thoughtfully, and it will very clearly be a painting. And the algorithm will pull it down, or I'll get reported by a viewer. Meanwhile, people who have more traditionally beautiful, more traditionally acceptable bodies are taking pretty scandalous sometimes videos, putting them out on the same platform, and no one has a problem with them. And when I first started talking about that, I would have people tag me in posts. They would find like some girl dancing in a bikini and tag and be like, hey, @AnnieMakesArt, can you believe this? She's not in trouble. And then I was like, oh, I don't want this to turn into shaming anybody else.
Yeah.
It is absolutely fine if you love your body and it looks traditionally beautiful and you want to, I don't know, financially monopolize on how dumb men will throw money at you over it. That's great. Do whatever you want. Live your life. No shame to sex workers or people who just experience body love in a more kind of traditional setting. I don't want to hate on them. I just want the same to be provided for people who are representing bodies that are not as typically loved in the media.
No, I love that. And we touched a little bit on that in our body positivity, where we just like really did a deep dive on our relationship with bodies. And part of the body positivity movement has been this backlash to traditionally beautiful people, where it's like, well, you don't have a place here. And like, in my mind, I'm like, well, that's dangerous, because insecurity is insecurity. And you don't know what's traumatized that person that you believe is conceptually beautiful, but they have to live in their own mind. So shouldn't they also have a place within this hype community? Because shouldn't we all just be telling everyone, feel great about your body, because it is your body and it's taking you where it needs to go?
Honestly, it's like internalized fat phobia is really what it is. And I feel like a lot of people don't even think about what they do sometimes when they interact with someone who is fat, and they just make it's just automatically a bad thing. You are less than. And nobody, like, it's this idea that nobody would want to see that on their TikTok page, like, and so then they report it, but you wouldn't report somebody who's traditionally, conventionally attractive based on, you know, media standards or whatever. And that's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
The concept of no one wants to see that, or that's not what people are interested in, is such an incredibly false narrative. I live a weird life, and I recently went to a porn convention.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Friend who is a cam girl, that's her full-time job, and she wanted to go to they have like a it's an Exotica is the name of it, with 3 X's, and it's like a convention for sex workers, cam girls, people in the porn industry. And she was like, do you want to go? And I was like, yeah. And before going to it, I had this kind of dumb misconception that I was like, I'm going to be in a room full of like traditional, like when you just picture like a cartoon stripper, what that looks like. And instead, when I went there, one of the things that was so delightful about it is there is a kink for everything. There is a market for everything. There are people who look like everything, and they have found the people that are turned on by that, or think that's beautiful, or think that's exciting. Just the narrative that like there is one thing that everyone is attracted to, or that everyone finds beautiful, is hot nonsense.
Nonsense. Nonsense. And it's just very limiting to like, that's almost insulting to my brain that I could only appreciate one thing out of a million things.
Absolutely. One of the other things I've thought about a lot lately, there's been kind of a backlash against the body positive movement, where people are saying that they lean more in favor of body neutrality. And the idea basically being that, like, you have more value than whether or not someone finds you attractive. And we shouldn't need to say everybody is beautiful. The point shouldn't be if it's beautiful or not. The point is there are other things that matter more. And when I first heard about that, I was very into it. I was like, that's a really cool idea. Maybe that's the direction I want to head with things. And the more I've kind of sat with it, the more I kind of find that it's hard for me to really connect to, because when I'm painting all these bodies and I'm looking at all these different people and I'm having conversations about it, I know that how beautiful you are to other people is not the most important thing, but I genuinely find so many different types of body really gorgeous, different skin tones and textures and wrinkles versus smooth and fat versus thin, and people who have had different disabilities or traumas and the physical marks that they've met. Our bodies go through such insane experiences, and they're this tangible thing that's floating through your life with you. And I understand that shouldn't be the most important thing, but, like, they're all really beautiful. I genuinely think that.
Right. It's like saying, like, I get it. I understand why people would want to set aside, like, oh, my physical form means nothing to me. It's my soul. And yes, your soul should be beautiful and celebrated and whatnot. But it's almost like saying, it's like going to Target and me being like, I don't even care what color or print the dress is. Why would I care? It's just the physical drapery that I'm going to put on my meat sack. And it's like, no, you go to Target and people care what the color of the dress is. Like, so, and that's fine. It doesn't make anyone vapid or shallow to be like, no, this is aesthetically pleasing to me.
Well, and it's okay if you choose to dress in a way where that's not what's important to you, but it's also okay if when you do that, someone still thinks you look great.
Yes, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
It can be all of the things. It can be neutral to you, but amazing to someone else. That's just how it works. I was going to talk a little bit about my experience taking my nude for you, if that's okay. So because I didn't let you tag it on Instagram or TikTok, but it's literally only because, like, I'm the black sheep is a harsh word to use, but, like, I am the eccentric member of my family, and I have a very odd relationship when it comes to attention and how my family views me getting attention. So I was like, well, I won't tag it because once I'm tagged, someone will get a hold of it in the algorithm. And however, my best friend from high school is like, what if we bought a print for each one of your family members and just gifted it to them for Christmas and told them nothing?
I love that idea, and I think you should do it.
Just be like, this is my friend Anne. Because I always buy, like, art for my family when I connect with an artist or something. And it's like, this is my friend Annie. This is what she does, and her work is beautiful. Hang it up in your home and just tell them nothing. But, so I had been sending it out to people individually that I knew would take it with love. One of my friends, this is the best quote I got so far, and she went, well, when you told me, I spent my evening taking nudes for a person I met on TikTok, I went, okay, that'll be an adventure. She goes, but it turned out really lovely, so look at that. And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I will put myself in really iffy situations, and it still somehow works out. I don't know.
And it does sound insidious. I'm always aware of that when I put it out, that I'm like, this sounds upsetting, and no one has to do it. But I've been shocked at how many people like you are just like, yeah, okay, sure. Here you go. Yeah. I'm trusting you blindly.
So the day I stumbled upon your ask for nudes was the day that I had finally taken a step towards my mental health journey and went to a doctor and got put on anxiety medicine, which I had been avoiding for a while. So I'm going through this, like, life upheaval. Like, I'm reworking my brain on how I feel about my own mental health and wellness. And then your TikTok pops up, and I was like, I'm brave today. So I messaged you, and I was like, do you still need models? Because, like, you could have said no. And I'm like, I get it if 100,000 people told you that they'd be your model, but I'll be your model too. And you very graciously were like, yeah, this is how we do it, and this, that, and the other. So then I have to set up my, like, rickety rain light. And make no qualms about it, I have taken nudes in my life. I have taken nudes in my family living room with my father sitting upstairs in his bedroom. Like, I am a pro at the cropping out my face, I'm still going to be president nude. So I set up the ring light and I start doing, like, my, what do I want to call it? My, like, trying to turn you on poses. And then I stopped and my artist brain kicked in and I was like, Annie doesn't need me to be a sex pot. She needs shapes and lighting and things to go that. So I completely did a 180 on how I was thinking about my own body. And I was like, okay, how can I make it so my legs have angles that will then turn into lines and shapes and shading that she can go off of? And that was a really cool experience because, and I told people after they saw the painting or whatever, I would tell them, I'm like, nudes don't have to be just for boners. They can be art.
I love hearing that. When people do respond to my requests and say, like, I'm interested, what do we do? I have kind of a disclaimer of just, like, how it's going to work and all of that to make sure everyone's comfortable and on the same page. But one of the things that I do make a point of saying is I'm not going to coach you on posing. I'm not going to tell you how to pose, your lighting, your angles, any of it. Whatever you send me, I will figure out a way to work with it. But take off your clothes, send me some pictures. Right. And one of the things one of the reasons why I do that is I get so much more interesting material back than I would if I were trying to coach someone who I don't necessarily know that well. I'm not there in person. I'm not actually taking the pictures. They're probably not as comfortable because I'm telling them what to do. And when I just let people take their own pictures, I get back these really intimate, beautiful, thoughtful poses. And some of them do feel like something you would send to, like, someone you're dating. And some of them don't at all. And either way, it leads to an interesting painting. I have a lot of options to kind of crop and see how I want to position it. But I love the idea that there was this mental shift for you of, like, wait, who am I taking these for? What is the purpose? And the idea that a nude can be for boners or it can be for fancy oil painting.
Ooh la la. Also, the way I'm blown, because yesterday my print came in the mail, which was perfect because I had a shitty day, and then I was like, oh, it's my print. And I sent a picture of it to my friend from childhood who had watched your TikToks and, like, was very involved once you posted the painting, and she was like, what does your print feel like? I go, I know, right? Because I had to touch it too, because the way that you photograph your prints is a way I've never seen done, where I could almost count every brush stroke. And, like, I just ran my fingers along the print like an insane person. And I was like, no, it should have texture because I can see all of the brush strokes. And I've never had that feeling before when looking at a print.
Aw, you're so nice. I just am, like, smiling dorkily at this recording.
I was that kid in high school who had no hobbies and no talents and would just glob onto you and your talents and be, like, happy adjacent and, like, thrilled for all my passions because you had passion. And now that I've kind of started, like, my artist eye or journey or whatever, like, I could talk about this for the rest of my life because I just, like, want to consume it all.
I think that's amazing. I think that art should be accessible to everybody. It makes me crazy when there's gatekeeping in terms of materials or education or access to art at all. I think we've seen over and over again through, like, outsider art how there can be people who never have formal training and never have fancy material who make groundbreaking, beautiful art. And I also think that there's this weird mindset, especially in America, where it's like after a certain age, you stop learning things. Like, when I taught dance, I saw it all the time. People would come in because they were learning, like, for their first dance, for their wedding, or it was like a married couple that wanted a hobby. and you'd see people have these like meltdowns where it was like, well, I haven't had to learn anything new in decades and it feels bad. And I was like, yeah, learning is hard.
It feels bad. I love
Whenever I was
my
teaching
God.
kids, they would be so easy to work with because they're used to being told they're wrong all the time. They're used to being bad at things. Everything is new. But you get some like 50-year-old businessman in there and suddenly you're telling him he's like walking wrong to do a foxtrot. And he's like, well, this is how I've been walking my whole life. And you're like, well, you haven't been dancing your whole life. Like learning new things is hard. So I think that's really cool that you have started an art journey right now. Like, that's great. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. My watercolor teacher is lovely. However, she is very frustrated with my choice of materials because I am a poor and I bought I just looked at all of the variety packs at Michael's and I picked the one that I thought had the most brushes on her list, which means that they are cheap brushes, and she'll just like hold them up and she'll be like, do you see how the bristles aren't even? And I'm like, uh-huh. And she's like, do you see that this isn't a very good quality brush? And I'm like, uh-huh, I'm a poor. Thank you. I've always been poor. Thank you. Like,
I don't want to talk smack on your teacher because I think especially in a learning environment, if you're trying to show specific techniques and things, it can matter to have the tools that are going to make that learning process easier. But I will say, I've been painting for a very long time and I do it every day, and I use the cheapest, worst brushes. It would blow your mind because I want to just absolutely demolish them with my process, and then I'm bad for the environment. No one yell at me, but I just destroy them and then throw them away and buy more garbage brushes because I would rather do that than get fancy brushes and feel like I need to be very thoughtful and gentle with them and properly clean them. I want my art supplies to be like the wreckage of my creation.
Yeah.
I love that warrior spirit in you. Like, I've destroyed this. It's like when I get excited on Animal Crossing when one of my tools breaks and I was like, yeah, I did fish really well today. And now my fishing pole is broken. But I do love that. I love the carnage that you leave behind after your painting.
There's something satisfying about that process. I've always been like that. I love like when you have a pair of boots that you wear for so long that they're just like they become a historical landmark where you're like, yes, these boots have seen some things.
I love that feeling. It almost makes it like an heirloom of your life. The boot, your boots like went with you through so many parts of your life that you're like more attached to them because they're falling, they may not look as pretty, but they've been through some shit, you know what I'm saying? Like, they've been with you forever. So
I just think across the board there's this pull for like material preciousness that like you spent money on something so it is precious and you must take the utmost care of it. But especially when it comes to art supplies, those are tools. You're supposed to use them to achieve a goal, and if that goal along the way destroys them, get some more tools.
Well, right. And the artist way, and another artist on TikTok made me realize that that's one of my anxiety points. So when I look at a blank canvas and then I look at my newly bought paints, my brain automatically goes, don't fuck with these and fuck them all up. You spent money on this, and paint an ocean, but you better know how to paint that fucking ocean. Because if you didn't, what a waste of these lovely materials and canvas that you spent money on. And I'm finally starting to like sketch more and do more rough stuff that keeps me practicing. But to get over that mindset of like, I have a scarcity complex when it comes to my supplies.
That's really, really normal. And I posted a video the other day and said something that I did not think was particularly profound, and that a lot of people were like, whoa. That was along those lines, which was just when you're in school, you go through a million notebooks. You buy notebooks that you fill with notes on subjects that you're honestly probably not going to revisit a lot in your life. How often are you going back and be like, what did I talk about in AP Bio when I was in senior year, whatever? But no one thinks of those notebooks as wasteful because they were a tool in the learning process. And art is an eternal learning process. You're always trying new techniques, new subject matter. You're always trying to grow as an artist. Any art supplies you use, it is impossible to waste them because whatever you're doing with them, you're learning something. Even if what you're learning is, I'm bad at this and I made an ugly thing, that's an important lesson to learn. And you're only going to learn it by trying it and then being like, I hate what I made, throw it in the garbage, never look at it again. But if you keep it pristine and on your shelf, that is a waste of a supply, because that's a supply that you could have learned something from and you could have made something from, and instead you just were scared of and spent money on and then never used.
Right. All right. So the name of the podcast is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before. So let's get into some nitty gritty. At any point in your career, or even in this exploration of nudes of all sizes and varieties, how have you ever felt pressure as a female artist or as a woman in your industry to kind of follow some unspoken rules, or have there been influences of the patriarchy during your career?
Well, I'll say first in a general sense, I remember my freshman year, I went to Parsons, which is an awesome art school in New York, and it was like my dream school, and I'd always wanted to go there. And one of the first lectures I was ever in was this huge lecture that, like, I think all the freshmen, the incoming freshmen, were in the same lecture. And I don't even remember what the speaker was talking about, but at one point they were like, I want you to take a minute to look at the diversity in this room, the different genders and races and ages and all the people who are a new incoming class of artists. And then I want you to ask yourself why it is that museums are 99% full of white, straight, cis men. And I was like, oh, bummer. That is real. And there's been a big push in recent years to be more inclusive in the art world and to change who's being represented in the gallery scene. And honestly, a lot of those things, even just the existence of like gallery culture, is changing and to some degree kind of going away. But a lot of the art world is inherently biased in a bummer way, and in a way that I have to acknowledge I have benefited from. I am a straight white lady. So I have gotten benefits that some other people have not. And that sucks. In my day-to-day life, I don't struggle that much with it because, again, I live on a very specific little corner of the internet that I hope to live in forever that is pretty free of toxic masculinity. But when I do put out those calls for references, I have found it really interesting that the vast majority of people who've responded have been women and have been aggressively thoughtful. They've been like, tell me exactly what you're looking for and how I should send it. And like in the subject line, they'll be like, warning, if you open this, you will see me naked. And I'll be like, yeah, I know. That's what I asked for. It's okay. It's been like very cute, very thoughtful conversations. Versus I get very few submissions from men, and the men who do submit pictures to me have only been very traditionally attractive men. The women who've submitted stuff to me, for the most part, it's been the opposite. There have been some very traditionally beautiful women who have, but a lot of people have been plus sized, or they are specifically focusing on scars or parts of their body that they're self-conscious about, versus the only submissions I've gotten from men, for the most part, have been like, I'm really proud of my six-pack, or like, here's my very cute butt. And I don't want to shame them, because that is also self-love, and that is also body positivity, and I don't want to gatekeep I can't talk. I don't want to gatekeep body positivity and be like, that is only for women or only for non-men or whatever. But I also feel like it would be kind of weird in my body of work to have this focus on bodies that are traditionally marginalized and then be like, but here's a shiny six-pack for you. Like, I don't know. It doesn't.
And here's Greg, and he is an Adonis.
And I wouldn't even qualify that as particularly toxic, because even those men have been pretty sweet about it for the most part. I've gotten the occasional creepy stuff where I'm just like, okay, you just want to use my art to trick people into looking at you naked. That's not the game we play. But for the most part, it's been men who've been like, you know, I've worked really hard on my body and I'm proud of it. And if you would like to paint it, here it is. And then I don't know how to politely be like, I don't know that I do want to paint it.
That's hard to say to somebody who's
Very
proud of their body. I mean, clearly.
Proud of them, and it's not because their bodies aren't valid or beautiful. I just feel like there is enough public applause for just like shredded man bod that we're all already pretty psyched about it, like as a group.
Dina and I talk a lot about the luxury that men have. And to me, when I was hearing about like the difference between the female representation or the non-men representation you receive to do these paintings compared to Greg the Adonis, I'm like, because of course men have this luxury of like, I did sit-ups, So now someone celebrate my 6-pack, and we usually do swoon and clap and all of that. But then the other side of the coin is like, I did it as a celebration of me and my stretch marks or my bigger thighs or whatever. And it's because I have to fight every day to prove to you that my body is beautiful and my body is art and I get to be proud of my body. So, like, it's still such a juxtaposition of, like, those are our mindsets. Men just get to be proud of their bodies and their 6-packs, and we just accept it. And then, like, women are like, well, I'm going to look like whatever the hell I want to look like, and you're going to put it in a painting and people will think that it's beautiful.
Well, and I think there is something to acknowledge about the fact that a lot of the kind of straight, cis, het, male existence has been excluded from body positivity in a way that's not necessarily fair. There are men that fall into that category that struggle with what their bodies look like and that don't have a 6-pack and that also deserve representation. Those men are not reaching out and sending me pictures, unfortunately. I wish they would.
I wonder why they aren't reaching out to you.
I don't know. I think that there is a thing where people who are female identifying or don't fit into kind of the traditional gender roles or what have you, are celebrated for bravery by embracing their bodies versus because I think traditional straight het men have been left out of the body positivity conversation. I don't think there's a feeling of like, if I do this, there will be someone being like, you go, sister. Like it, I think it's a lonelier road, which is sad. But I also think, tying into your point, as bummer as that is, and as much as I hate that they're excluded from the conversation, part of the reason why they are is that we do see representation all the time of like the sitcom dad with like the beer belly who still has like a hot wife and it's okay because he's funny. Like there is a sense of like men in society are valued for more than their body. And then if on top of that they have a good body, we all lose our dang minds. Versus women, the expectation is this like unreachable perfection that even if you reach, you're going to be doing something wrong. Someone's going to be mad at you and criticizing you for something. And it all ties back to the expectation that like you need to be beautiful, which I don't think the same thing is usually put upon men.
No, we've talked about the sitcom dad, and I am very funny and fat, and I would have made a wonderful sitcom dad. But unfortunately, I was born a woman and I'm a cisgender woman, so I don't get to be a sitcom dad, even though I would have nailed it. So I'll never get that hot wife that's just with me for my funny.
I know that I'm supposed to be being interviewed by you, and I'm not supposed to ask the questions, but I am curious because you are both funny ladies, and as far as I know, both primarily date men. I don't know, question mark. But do you find it more challenging to date men when you're funny? I think I'm funny. Maybe I'm wrong. But I have found that in dating, they don't like that. I don't know.
Dina, do you want to go first?
I give off like a very like, I don't know. I always feel like I'm the one wearing the pants in the relationship. And so that just allows me to be whatever it is I want to be. It seems like, so I've never had an issue with that. Now, growing up, I would say that because I was the funny girl, like nobody could consider me attractive or like whatever just because I was the funny one. But like in my adulthood, and now I've surrounded myself with people that aren't assholes because you can actually choose who you want to be surrounded by. I've had less of a problem with that, but yeah.
Really thought about how it is built into this dichotomy of like hot people are serious about their hotness, and then funny people are funny, and that's it. And obviously, again, this anytime you speak in generalizations, it's not everybody, but
of course.
No, like Taylor Tomlinson, super hot, would date her. Don't think she dates chicks, but very funny. And but for me, it's a lot of the same. There is an assertiveness to my funny and comedy, and I grew up surrounded by a very powerful hot mom, and my aunts and my grandma, and they were very strong, no nonsense. We never take shit from these men, women. And so there's an assertiveness to the way that I carry myself, where I told a coworker on Wednesday, because she asked me about my dating life, and I was like, because I said something happened at work, and I was like, I am always the security blanket for weak men. I become their security blanket. And she goes, does that happen when you date? And I'm like, yes. Like, basically, like, I'm either your personality for you, or one time I did get to date someone who I thought was as charming and witty and funny as I was. And it was like fire and gasoline. And we were both just trying to set one another on fire to prove who was going to be the alpha of the party and the best time. So that relationship was a lot of toxic, but it was also the closest I ever got to where I was like, oh, but you're on par with me. And I've never dated someone who's on par with me. I've always had to be like the rah-rah to someone's like, well, I guess I'll just show up and I brought potato salad to the party and I'll just stand in the corner and let Natalie work the room. So, yeah. What about Annie? Answer your own question.
First of all, I'm not going to tell anyone what to do, but don't date someone who brings potato salad to the party. Don't. Especially if there's raisins in it, dump him.
Raisins and potato salad, I would literally throw it in their face. Like, I cannot. That's a problem.
I have... dating is always a nightmare in different ways for different people. I just have found, with some exceptions along the way, that when I do date someone who... everyone's funny in their own way, but someone who's like, I'm a funny person, like I enjoy the comedic attention and that energy and all of that especially from men, they like that feeling of being the funny person in the room. And when you're also a funny person in the room, instead of it being like, look how funny and great we are, it's like, well, no, laugh at me, not you. It's like, well,
right.
Oh, the jealousy is real.
Do you find that there's a lot of pressure in your relationships because you're a talented person?
God, you are so nice. Do you want to date
me? Maybe.
I don't feel that there's a lot of pressure in my relationships. I do think that sometimes it's hard for people to understand how all-encompassing that kind of passion can be. And the person I'm seeing right now, it works out very well because he has his own unrelated thing that he is very passionate about doing, that I can be like, I'll see you in 3 days. And I'll be like, great. And we'll go do his thing and I will go do my thing. And then later we can watch Squid Game. But in past relationships, it has been challenging sometimes when it'll be like, I'm gonna go paint today. And what that means is I am going to do that all day and maybe all the next day and maybe all the next day. Like, it is what I do. And especially for something that most people consider a hobby, that can be a little intense for people, especially people who their love language is like quality time. Because I don't want people around me when I'm working. I'm not like trying to be rude or anything, but I'm working. And sometimes what that looks like is me like eating dumplings and watching Netflix, but not actually painting, but that's part of the process and you can't be there.
Part of the thing.
It's an important part.
You must go away while I do this important work. This is the pre-painting process.
It's my dumpling ritual, and it's what sets me up for success. You have your weird football jersey you haven't washed from 1972, and I have my pre-painting dumplings.
I don't know if you've ever seen the show You're the Worst, but there's a character, one of the main characters in it is a guy who's a writer, and there's a scene where he said that he's working on his next book or he's doing whatever, and she finds him in a bar like playing darts and drinking, and she's like, what happened to you working? And he was like, I'm writing. This is writing. This is what writing looks like. I'm writing right now. If I don't do this, the writing will never happen. And I was like, he sucks and he's supposed to suck and you're supposed to hate him, but also, yep, I get it.
Yep,
so I get it. You're right right now. It's
like when I have to disassociate when I have my idea, and I'll be like, I have an idea. And then 4 days later, my friend will go, did you do anything with that idea? And I'm like, no, it's still just right here. and it'll get bits and pieces in my brain until I put it on whatever medium it needs to be on.
You know what I've started doing is, like, if I see, like, I'll scroll through TikTok, and if I see someone's art or something that really speaks to me, like, ooh, I could see myself doing a style that's, like, similar to this or something, but I just know that I'm not in the mood or in the place to do it right this second, but I look at it and I'm like, I will do you someday. Something along these lines. This has inspired me to try this. And then I'll just save it, and then I'll come back to it when I am ready to do that thing.
That's one of the nightmare things about TikTok, though, is they have a terrible saving system.
They do.
But, like, I go out of my way to like everything because that's, like, encouraging and supporting your community. I like everything, and then when you go back later to find it, Instagram has that handy little save it for later vibe. TikTok is cutthroat. They're like, do it now or do it never. Never.
Literally. And I wish you could, like, organize them into buckets for things. Because I do, like, in my brain, have little buckets of, like, the types of TikToks that I'm saving for whatever reason I'm saving them for. And it could just be I'm supporting someone and really love their work, and I want to, do that by liking their videos. But then it's also like, oh, this is something that I'm interested in and want to look more into, but can't do it right now. Wish I could put that into a separate folder or category or something.
My TikTok hack is because when I come across a sound or something that I know I can use towards one of our podcast episodes, is I just take a 2-second draft of my face and then I put in the caption, like, this is me in a meeting disassociating. And then when I'm ready to make TikToks, I can immediately pull that sound up, because it's a terrible system on how to save things. But Dina, maybe you could do that. Do a stitch or a duet draft and be all like, this is a poppy field I want to paint.
And, like, not post it, but just, like,
keep it in your drafts.
The other thing you can do is copy the link and text it to yourself, and then they get the boost, too, if you copied a link.
So, I am fascinated, and we kind of talked about this when we had our friend Caitlin on to talk about scary movies. I am fascinated with this idea of the female gaze, because I don't understand it. And my internalized misogyny is real, and I can't pick out what is the male gaze versus the female gaze, because my entire life has been the male gaze. So, as an artist, how do you try to incorporate the female gaze versus the male gaze in your work?
That's an awesome question, and a really interesting point about being so wrapped up in the existence of the male gaze that you can't even really differentiate comfortably.
I can't. No.
I think that it is inherent in the process. I kind of get to sneak around the whole danger of the male gaze because I am a female artist and I work generally with female or non-binary models. So there's not a lot of male input at all. There is male gaze present in that actually, you do know the difference, because when you told me the story about modeling for my picture, you started out intentionally positioning yourself for the male gaze. You were posing yourself in a way that you knew not one specific man, but man as a concept would approve of and like. And then you were like, wait, make it art. And then suddenly it stops being about the male gaze. And it's not really that black and white, because there's plenty of argument to be made that a lot of traditional beauty within the art world was defined by male artists. But in that moment, you were trying to create an image for me. And it was not for the purpose of sexualization. It was not for the purpose of arousal. It was, you are a woman who was trying to make art for another woman to make more art from. That's pretty much as pure away from the male gaze as you can get, beside the fact that we both grew up in a society that is heteronormative and obnoxious. So right in the process, I do have a pretty easy shortcut around a lot of it, but I do still have to think about, the context in which the picture was taken. Like, sometimes people send me pictures from earlier in their life that they already had, what their process was, what they were thinking about, what they're hoping to get out of it. I think, I don't know, the male gaze is built into everything we do. Like, if you look at commercials for anything, it'll be a commercial for like a Pepsi, and yet the woman will be like rubbing it against her face. Like, when have you ever like seductively rubbed a Pepsi against your cheek? Or like, there's a lot of like soft hands against things. Like, you're giving like a gentle hand job to whatever, like to a razor or whatever it is.
It's so true. It really is.
I'm going to make TikToks to promote this episode of me giving gentle hand jobs to everyday objects.
Yes.
And you'll become wildly famous and successful because it's what the people want to see.
Please do like a pineapple or something. Like, that's just like, absolutely ridiculous. Like, yes.
About it, and when we talk about being so entrenched in it, is that even applies to things that are being marketed towards women. If you take like a razor blade that is targeted towards women for shaving their legs, the commercial will be like hot, sexy women in the shower, like gently hand jobbing their own legs. That's not targeted towards men, but it's targeted towards women who want to be appealing to men. So it's like male gaze on male gaze every which way. Even in something that is not meant for men, it is targeted as if it is meant for them, because the assumption is that the people who want it want men to want them. Ugh, society's gross.
Society is gross. Welcome to our podcast. Would you like to talk about capitalism? Our number one foe. Okay. So, TikTok and censorship. I have a lot of opinions about censorship. Do you feel like the reason that and we kind of touched on this already, but I do kind of want to go deeper with it. Do you feel like the reason that you are censored so much is a direct result of the male gaze and the patriarchy and the set of unspoken rules that we all live by?
I think that there are a lot of weird things happening with censorship on social media in general. And those extend well beyond gender constructs. There's things like how the algorithm is more responsive and more supportive of people with lighter skin tones as opposed to darker skin tones. That it is more responsive to people who wear makeup versus not, which dooms me because, like, hard pass. I think that the type of bodies I portray and the type of genders I portray and all of that do put me at a disadvantage for censorship. And I think part of that is there is some insidious robot technology part of it that I don't really understand, where for whatever reason, the people who are in charge of these apps are kind of gross and kind of racist and kind of sexist and kind of nightmares. And then the other part of it is that, talking about being entrenched in a society that builds that up, you can tell on TikTok, for the most part, when you're being reported by the bot versus when you're being reported by a person. If I put a video up and 10 seconds later it gets pulled down and flagged, that means that their own internal screening process processed it and somehow scanned it and was like, there's a butt in there, you're in trouble. Versus sometimes a painting will get through that screening process, a lot of times because I go out of my way to try and crop and edit and cover and do things, and then 3 days later, someone will report it as being inappropriate, which blows my mind. Because it's very obviously art, which is not against the guidelines. It's not actually against the rules. So someone was scrolling through this app and sees an oil painting of a naked body that is already fairly censored by me. And even though it's not against the rules, is so offended that they can't just keep scrolling. They have to go through the process of actually reporting it. Says a lot more about what they're going through with their relationship to bodies than anything else.
There's when it comes to censorship, there's like the robot part of it, and then there's the innate human nature to hate ourselves and everyone else around us, where it's like, my whole thing is, why is it your business? Like, why? I would have to think that I am so self-important to be on Instagram, see a woman trying to make her money as a cam girl or on OnlyFans or whatever, and be so irately pissed about it that I flag her to disrupt her business.
Yeah, I don't get it. Everybody has something to say about other people who are in no way harming or doing anything that has anything to do with them, and yet they go out of their way to just cause hate about it, and I just don't understand why people can't just allow others to like things that they don't necessarily understand or like. Why is it a problem that we have different likes and wants and views, or we look different, or all this stuff? It just feels like unnecessary hatred.
What's almost funny about it, but mostly sad, is that, as we talked about earlier with you saying how, like, artists are always on there peddling, being like, please like this, please comment, please interact, please, 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 someone acknowledge my existence. We really do have to go out of our way to try and get community engagement, because it's so hard to get someone to stop doom scrolling and actually double tap, let alone write words or really engage with you. And yet, when people are mad because there's a boob, they will take like 5 minutes to like write up a report to TikTok. And it's like, couldn't you put that energy towards something you do like and support instead of just into like blind, unnecessary rage that's not going to stop me from painting? Like,
and the irony is that it helps you by them commenting and interacting with your post.
Do you get,
as long as they're not reporting it.
Do you get flack from parents of small people about your work? Does anyone ever go think of the children for you?
I make think of the children jokes a lot, because when people do report me and I go on like a tirade about it, I'm always like, oh, but think of the children. What if they see a nude body like they have and their parents have and everyone has? I haven't gotten a lot of think of the children. Because I am not in any way a mainstream entity. I'm not like, I have fellow figure painters who I've talked to who are much more involved in doing like art fairs and things like that in person, where it's way more likely that like a child could walk up and see your work, versus if your very small child has somehow ended up in nude portraiture TikTok. I don't know what their likes and interests are, but first of all, feed that. That's very cool. Your kid is weird and they're going to make cool art. I don't know. But I have not had to deal with that a whole lot yet. I know that for all artists, the more success you find in a platform, the more of that kind of bullshit you have to take to deal with, because you are getting in front of more eyes, and just percentage-wise, more people are going to be pissed for no reason at you.
I do just feel like it's always the weakest excuse. It's like, why did you report my butt painting? Well, what if my toddler saw the butt that you painted? Well, why does your toddler have supervised access to TikTok? Like, we can play this game all day long. Like, am I an offensive artist, or are you a bad parent? Who's to say?
Especially bizarre because, like, your kid will probably at some point in their life go to an art museum, and those are chock full of butts. I don't know if you've been to an art museum lately, y'all, but there's butts everywhere. Butts on butts, not a bit of clothing to be seen.
Flying cherub butts just in the air. And nipples.
Yeah. So, again, and that goes back to what people think is appropriate or acceptable or not. If it's in a museum, it's got the museum stamp of approval that, yes, this is capital A art. Versus if it's on TikTok, then you're not a real artist, you're a pornographer.
A pornographer? Porn can be art, too. I'm just going to say it. They do a lot of production. Sometimes.
And that gets into the whole messy pile of, like, what is art? That is an exhaustive conversation. But
all right. Dina, do you have any other questions?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, my last one, because you ushered me into Art Talk community and you really did. And it was that video that you did where it's like, artists support artists, so comment here and let's all get a bunch of followers. And I've met so many cool people through it, including that wonderful lady who paints birds, who just woke up one day and went, she has the English accent. She hasn't popped up in a while for me. Okay, I will. And then the guy he's always doing rando wings and the weekly prompts, but he has that awesome mustache. Yes, Wolfgang. Yes, we love him. We love him. He's always super, I could literally splatter blue onto my sketchbook and be like, I did a thing today, and Wolfgang would be like, look at you! That feeling you put behind that.
That's what I'm talking about in terms of, like, the positivity loop. Like, you can go put negativity out there and find other grouchy curmudgeons any which way you look. But when you just put like your sweet, vulnerable, good vibes out, you end up with people on your feed who are like so excited about what you had for breakfast. You're like, look at this oatmeal, y'all. And they're like, you're killing it, girl.
That's the best oatmeal I've ever seen.
So why was fostering an environment on TikTok where you weren't just showcasing your art, but you were showcasing like, hey, we could be a community and we can hype one another up and be all friends important to you?
So I have told this story before on TikTok for anyone who is both listening to this and has followed me, which I don't know if that audience exists, but I just say it because I'm going to repeat myself. When I first started on TikTok, I had been over on Instagram forever. I finally caved and went over to try TikTok. Honestly, my motivation was that a friend of mine told me Kelly Bensimon from Real Housewives of New York had an insane account on there. And I was like, done. I'm on TikTok then. And for weeks, I would post content that I thought was good and that people should like. And then I would like walk away from the app. I was like, here's a painting I did. Done with TikTok now. And then I would come back like 3 days later and have like 2 views. And I was stuck with 2 followers for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I was like, this app doesn't work. I don't understand it. Why don't people love me? What's happening? And then one day I was like, okay, for whatever reason, I'm going to just like give this an honest try and like see what other people are doing and see how this is working. And I started actually commenting and liking and following and engaging with people who were doing things that were exciting to me. Other artists, other painters, creative people. And as soon as I started doing that, like you were talking about Wolfgang being a cheerleader for you back, as soon as I started being like, oh, I saw when you started this painting and it's so cool how it's developed, then they're coming over to my page and being like, oh, look at this thing you did. That's really cool. I'm proud of you. And it turned into this like positivity circle right away. And so that got me my first little bump of followers. And then I made a video being like, hey, you guys, I've got the hot secret of social media. Be social. And people were like, exactly, we can all be nice to each other. And that like became a fairly successful video and like brought me more followers. And I find that there are a lot of lessons in life that I have to keep learning over and over again because I learn them and then forget them and then kind of fall back into old habits again. And one that I already in my limited time on TikTok have had to learn a few times is that you 100% build your own community on there. You choose the kind of people that you're interacting with and the kinds of interactions that you're having or allowing to happen on your profile. And the more you're actually caring about and investing in other people, the more they will care about and invest in you. And I know that there can be kind of a jaded perspective of that, of like, oh, you're only interacting because you want it back. And it's not. It's truly not that. I get really excited. Like, you're my friend now, and I met you on TikTok. And it's exciting when you comment on something. I'm like, I know her. It's the same reason that, like, a lot of times artists will get grouchy being like, TikTok only shows artists if they show their faces, and why should it matter what I look like? And I think there's plenty wrong with the algorithm, but I don't think that's something wrong. I think that people are more responsive and they invest more in your work if they see who you are as a person. People care about personal stories. And, like, I now know what you look like when I see you pop up in my feed. Again, my, like, lizard brain is like, friend, and I want to hear what you have to say. Versus if you were just showing me watercolors, they might be beautiful, but I'm like, I'm looking at a whole scroll of watercolors. Am I going to stop and, like, really engage with what I'm looking at? So I've kind of gone off in the weeds in this long tangent, but I guess I just have found this app to be surprisingly supportive and, like, full of a really beautiful community, because there are so many people who are just trying to see and be seen and make friends and feel safe and comfortable. And the app world is so, like, cold and scary in theory that when you do feel like you connect with other people who are also just, like, trying their best and well-intentioned and, you know, being vulnerable and real and honest and putting themselves out there, it is exciting, and it makes you feel like opening that app up and actually making content and putting stuff out there is exciting. It's like going to, like, preschool with your other friends as opposed to being like, you know, this is work I have to do.
Yeah, the internet has given me great friends. Dina and I met through the internet.
That's right. Yeah. See, I have a very, like, I'm in the back of the internet, I feel like hiding like the gremlin, because I'm not I don't enjoy being on camera and things like that, you know, and being, like, all on social media a lot. But I've met a lot of my friends through gaming online, and me and Natalie met through Meetup, way long ago through a shared geeky interest. So I think it's amazing when it actually works the way as it's intended, and that is to bring people together, even the shy, awkward ones like me, so it's pretty amazing.
I literally said yesterday what you kind of just said right now. Like, you get out of the internet, TikTok, Instagram, podcasting, what you also put into it and what you also draw to you. So, like, I am always just, like, telling someone, oh my gosh, yesterday I stumbled upon this woman who made Halloween pottery. And I had never seen such line detail on glaze on pottery. And I was like, that is the most amazing zombie I've ever seen in glaze. And she's like, oh my gosh, thank you. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. Like, could I get a close-up of it? Because your detail work, I can't even get. I'm gobsmacked at my day job because I hate my day job. So I disassociate with TikTok. And I'm like, and that's kind of like my biggest takeaway from life now is that you get the interactions with the universe that you call to you. So if you're going to be pissed off at a butt on TikTok, or because you're not as successful as someone else on TikTok or whatever, you're just going to draw a lot of other people who are pissed off.
It's true. And even if you are putting out the most positive, good time vibes, there is always going to be the situation where, like, someone comes along and wants to take a dump on your parade. It always happens. But in those moments, we're only human, but I try to think about that fact and be like, I can go absolutely apeshit right now and, like, rant a whole bunch and, like, make a big deal of this, or I can try and just let it go and focus on, for that one negative comment or that one report, the, like, hundreds of people who have been supportive and kind and present. Like, why should I devalue their thoughts and feelings about what I'm doing versus this one asshole,
Exactly. All right, so we wrap up the episode in two very special ways. We do a giant takeaway of our experiences living in this society. Today's will be pigeonholed to our experiences with either experiencing or creating art in our society. And then we manifest and we try to get some vibes into the universe of where we would like our society to head when it comes to our art community and the way we experience or create art. So as a woman who has embraced plus-size bodies and turned them into gorgeous art, what is your big takeaway from this part of your artistic journey?
I think the big takeaway for me has been the significance of a collaborative element in what I'm doing. I've always been a fairly independent creator and fairly strong-willed and focused on what I'm doing. And I didn't mean for this to become a collaborative project, but it has led to all of these really beautiful, interesting conversations with people about their relationships with their body and their relationships with the world. And those conversations have not only improved the art, but they've dramatically improved the experience. And I still value being an independent creator, but I think the big takeaway for me has been that everybody out there has a really interesting story and a really interesting internal life that you are not privy to. And that those are really worth exploring.
Dina, do you have a takeaway?
I do. From listening to you talk about your awesome profession, Annie, and all these experiences that you've had, I think the biggest takeaway for me, has been that, in terms of art, learning and failing isn't a bad thing, finding out, trying something, new in your art isn't, and it not working isn't the end of the world. It's a learning journey. And, as someone who struggles with, and doesn't do my art and what I like to do in art, because I'm, a perfectionist, it's very hard, for me to want to do it more because I just see it as a failure for me. And so I would like to go more in the direction of failing isn't actually failing, it's just learning. And even if I don't gain any courage of like posting or showing my art to anybody, I still want to be, I still want to do it for me, and to do it more often without the pressure of feeling like it has to be something perfect that I can show to the world.
I think my big takeaway as a member of Art TikTok and kind of reshaping my identity as an artist and as one of your subject matters in a painting is my place in this community is mine to shape and to do with what I please. And I'm so happy that I am starting to gather more people into my community like you, Annie, and Wolfgang, and all the TikTok artist gang. And that means a lot to me because I am a very social, extroverted being. So my joy usually is a collaborative effort. And so I'm just really thrilled to be staking my claim on my place in the art world. All right, here's your big wish for the universe. What do you want for the art community going forward?
My big wish would be on an individual level for anybody who has not yet to be able to find that sense of community. It can be a really frustrating, exhausting journey. It can take a long time. You can find what you think is your people, and then turns out you're wrong, or you grow and change and you don't fit anymore. And like we've talked about, community makes such a difference in what your experience in anything is. So for anybody who is listening, whether they're an artist or not, if they are struggling to find their people, I just manifest that I hope that they do, and soon.
Yeah. Dina, do you have a manifestation?
Yeah, I'm just going to manifest that people are more accepting of one another and embrace our differences instead of... I keep coughing at the worst times. Instead of being angry at one another, let's just accept one another as they are. So,
my big manifestation is that if you haven't tried your hand at thinking about yourself as an artist, this is me calling you to do that. I had a friend when I was doing the artist way go, "Oh, I've never been very artsy." And I told him, I go, "Didn't you cook us all Thanksgiving dinner? Cooking is an artistry. You therefore are an artist." So I think that the best way to garnish a community and understanding is to immerse yourself in the thing that you are trying to understand. So pick up a pencil or a coloring book or a piece of butcher paper and see what you do about it. And if you want hype about it, our DMs are always open. All right. Annie, this is the part where you get to brag about all the places people can find you so they can start seeing your artwork.
I love it. I love bragging. My website, which I need to update, is anniesieg.com. The last name is Sieg. On TikTok, I have 2 accounts because one of them is on the verge of getting forever kicked off because it's been reported so many times. So that one is at Annie Makes Art, all one word. And my backup account is Peach Band Studios. I'm also on Instagram, but if you go to my website or my TikTok or anywhere, there's a link tree where it has my Etsy and my Redbubble and my million other platforms that I need to figure out how to stay on top of. So if you like an artist and want to support stuff, you can buy t-shirts or original paintings, or you can just come by and say hi. Because again, community is awesome.
That's right. We love it when people say hello. All right. And as always, please make sure to like and subscribe to the podcast so you can continue meeting great people like Annie through us. Leave us a 5-star review and comment about what you're enjoying. Our Instagram is at Men I've Tolerated Pod. My personal Instagram and my TikTok shenanigans are at NatalieK124, and we've got that Gmail that is in the link tree of our Instagram where you can send us long letters that I promise that I will reply to because I love pen pals.
And you can follow me on Instagram as well. My handle is at ms.caboose, and I'll have links to all my other social media and my Twitch, so come give me a follow if you ever want to see me play some video games.
Annie, I'm so excited that you came on and that we got to talk. And I grew up in Northwest Indiana, so I am usually always by Chicago at some point. just a heads up. We could take this friendship into the real world.
For real world friends, I was just talking to the guy I'm seeing about he's only known me in pandemic form, and he always says things like, I love that you don't care how you dress. And I'm like, well, no, I don't leave my house. I don't leave my house, so I wear pajamas all day, but let's not be rude. But
oh my God, he straight attacked you.
I know. But he'll be like, no, I like it. And I'm like, no, you don't, and shut up.
Sir.
Point is, I have a theory that I would dress like a human again if I had human interaction with someone that I'm not sleeping with. So, come on down. I'll put on a bra for you. Just kidding. I won't. But I will put on pants.
Well, you know what? I don't even believe in pants anymore. I only wear skirts to work because they have forgiving waistbands. And people are like, ooh, where are you going tonight? I'm like, my bed. My pants don't fit. All right, tolerators. All around, wherever you are, remember, you don't have to smile through anything you're tolerating, especially if someone is trying to make your body into an obscenity. Your body is beautiful and it is art, and we love you and we love it. Bye, everybody.